Look at the Reading 31 study questions for Merle Miller's What It Means to Be a Homosexual. Number one, James Ellis, president of Gay Activist Alliance, a militant, non-violent organization concerned with civil rights for homosexuals, says, "We don't give a damn whether people like us or not. We want the rights we're entitled to." My question was open ended. Do you agree with this approach for a civil rights organization? Do you think it is too confrontational? Why or why not? I think most people, just as no right or wrong answer, most people said no. If you, the best way to, the best way to get your rights is to demand them. A lot of people would disagree. I have to say, a lot of people would disagree. I've heard so much from people to this on this issue that if you complain too loudly or if you're too militant in your demands, that you will alienate people. That's why I asked the question. Most people in our class dismiss that notion. That shouldn't be a concern. I have to say that it is a concern with a lot of people. I don't share it. I agree with the approach personally, but I do recognize that people do think that if you push too hard or you move too fast, you shoot yourself in the foot. But I don't happen to agree with that, but I think that it is a plausible position that people take. And that's why I asked the question. I was wondering if other people might think that. Number two, Miller says of himself, "What a fink I was." Why? Well, because he was not only in the closet, but that he generally participated in homophobia, for much of his life, most of his life. Although he knew he was a gay man, he denied it, tried to live the life of a heterosexual man, got married. But generally speaking, I think he felt like he betrayed his brothers, more or less, people that he should not have betrayed. That he was no better than somebody who named names during the Red Scare and McCarthy years. But he contributed to the persecution of gay men. So, yeah, he was a fink. He was a fink. I'm not saying it's easy not to be a fink, but he was a fink. Of course he was. But many of us do things like that. And he's has loads of regrets for what he did. It wasn't that he actively, you know, was trying to expose gay men or punish them, but he went along with the general homophobia, so he was a fink in his own eyes. And maybe this he wrote this because he didn't want to be a fink anymore. Number three, Huey Newton is quoted as saying that maybe a homosexual could be the most revolutionary. Why might he have said this around 1970? Do you agree? I mean, Huey Newton was a Black Panther, I believe. He saw himself as a revolutionary on the part of black people in America, or maybe more than America, right? Maybe globally. But I think he was suggesting that the homosexual is really the most revolutionary, right? I mean, he said that, right? Because the homosexual was maybe the most danger to the existing power structure, right? I mean, that is the homosexual was the biggest threat to the establishment because he denied something essential about that establishment, maybe even a way more revolutionary than a black person could be, or another persecuted minority, because they were the most repressed, most oppressed. I mean, it's an interesting idea. I don't know. Number four, what does Miller think of the idea that homosexuals are generally less happy than heterosexuals? That he of course says it's not true. That there are unhappy people everywhere of all sexual orientations. It's important, though, because it's exactly what Epstein says, that homosexualities are tyrannized by their sexuality, or homosexuals are tyrannized by their sexuality, and that it's a curse. I think what Miller is trying to say is it's not. Even in a homophobic society, it's not a curse. But then in the last paragraph, Miller considers the question of whether he would prefer to have been born straight. What is his answer? I think he's ambivalent about it, as people responded. But there's part of him that maybe thinks that Epstein was partly right. I don't know. That is, it would have been easier, perhaps, if been born straight. But ultimately, he says he's happy with who he is because if he had been born straight, it wouldn't have been him, right? So it's an ambivalent answer, though. I don't know. It's his answer, and we can't say that it's just a result of his historical experience, but maybe it is. I don't know. But it's an ambivalent answer. Ultimately, he would not have been preferred, but he has to think about it, I guess. On the last question is just whether you think that Miller successfully refutes what Epstein has to say. But what would that mean? What did Epstein have to say? If what Epstein was saying was that ultimately homosexuality is an abomination and a curse, did Miller refute that? How would you refute something like that? How do you refute a prejudice, really? But I don't know. Open-ended question.